What if the key to ruling an empire was marrying your own sister? Not metaphorically, literally. Across history, the price of keeping a royal throne unchallenged wasn't just war or betrayal. Sometimes it was marrying your own sister. And no, these weren't accidents or anomalies. They were strategies, cold, calculated moves to preserve so-called purity. Because in royal courts from Egypt to Europe, blood wasn't just thicker than water. It was currency, and the fewer people who shared it, the more valuable it became. This wasn't love, it was legacy. Power passed from brother to sister to son, again and again, until the line blurred between family and fate. But those lines weren't just blurred, they were broken. Morality shattered under the weight of crowns. What you're about to hear are 5 stories, haunting, real, and almost too dark to believe. Kings who didn't just defy ethics, they redefined it. And by the time we reach number 1, you'll question whether power like that was ever worth the price. Ramses II, Ramses the Great, is remembered as Egypt's most powerful and celebrated pharaoh. A warrior, a builder, a god among men. His statues tower over deserts. His temples still inspire awe. But beneath that stone legacy lies a truth far more difficult to admire. This mighty ruler, the so-called Father of Egypt, may also have been husband to his own daughters. In ancient inscriptions and temple reliefs, 2 of his daughters, Bintenath and Meritamen, are referred to not just as beloved of the king, but also as great royal wives, a title reserved only for queens. There are no records of outrage, no signs of scandal. Because in the theology of ancient Egypt, the pharaoh wasn't just a man, he was a living god. And gods, according to their myths, married within their own divine blood. So when Ramses placed crowns on his daughters' heads, it wasn't framed as corruption. It was painted as cosmic order, a mirror of the god's will. But thousands of years later, we see it with different eyes. We can't ignore the horror behind the ceremony. That behind the robes and rituals were children bound to a father not by duty, but by dynasty. This wasn't affection. It was a claim on power, on divinity, on lineage. Today we view such acts as unimaginable. Then they were immortalized in stone, and that is perhaps the most unsettling part. The line between God and man, between protector and violator, blurred by the very people who wrote history into walls. Tutankhamun, a name wrapped in gold and legend, yet beneath the shine lies a story almost too tragic to bear. He wasn't just Egypt's boy king, he was its most delicate secret. Born to a royal bloodline obsessed with divinity and purity, Tutankhamun was the product of a union between brother and sister. His very existence was proof of a dynasty's dangerous game, trading genetic health for political control. And he continued the tradition. He married Ankhesenamun, his half-sister, possibly his full sister. Together they ruled in name, but behind palace walls, their reign was marked not by triumph, but by fragility. 2 daughters were born to them, both stillborn, their tiny mummified bodies discovered beside their father's tomb. Modern DNA analysis confirmed what ancient whispers could only suggest. This was no coincidence. Tutankhamun himself suffered from a cleft palate, club foot, and severe bone disease. He walked with a cane, not a scepter. The glory painted on tomb walls concealed a truth that couldn't be gilded. Even in death, his bloodline couldn't escape its curse. The gods may have crowned him, but genetics took their toll. In Tutankhamun's brief, burdened life, the great paradox of Egypt's royal ambition played out in full. To appear divine, they had to stay within their own blood. But the cost of that illusion was all too human. High in the mountains of southeastern Turkey, where wind and time have worn the stones into silence, a forgotten king left behind a monument to his ambition and his bloodline. Antiochus I of Commagene, a name absent from most history books, ruled a tiny kingdom in the 1st century BCE. But his choices echoed the traditions of far greater empires. Like the Egyptians and the Persians before him, Antiochus believed power flowed not just through conquest, but through blood kept unbroken. So he married his own sister, Aisias Philostorgos, blending Persian reverence for royal blood with Hellenistic grandeur. This was no story of love, it was legacy dressed in ritual. He didn't write poems for her. He built a mountain. On Mount Nemrut, colossal stone heads watch over the tomb sanctuary he carved into the rock, where gods sit beside kings, and Antiochus declares himself divine. Among the inscriptions, Aisias is honored not just as queen, but as a critical link in the royal line. And while the records are few, the intent is carved in stone. Why would a king marry his sister and then raise a mountain in her name? Because in his world, eternal rule meant eternal blood. And in those heights, ambition was set in stone, even if affection never was. In most of the world, marrying your sister is a scandal. In ancient Egypt under the Ptolemies, it was a coronation. Ptolemy II, Philadelphus, ruler of Egypt in the 3rd century BCE, didn't just marry his sister Arsinoe II, he celebrated it. He crowned her not only as queen, but as Queen of Queens. Her face appeared on coins beside his. Her name was sung in temples, and together they were worshipped as gods. This wasn't some hidden, shameful arrangement. It was public, official, and deliberate. The Ptolemies weren't Egyptian by blood. They were Greek conquerors trying to claim divine legitimacy. So they resurrected an old Egyptian tradition, sibling marriage, the hallmark of pharaonic divinity. For Ptolemy, Arsinoe wasn't just a sister. She was a political strategy in human form, turning taboo into triumph. Coins that once bore military victories now bore a couple, arm in arm, eyes forward, framed in gold. To the outside world, it looked like devotion, but underneath, it was pure calculation. By aligning himself with Arsinoe, Ptolemy fused bloodline with power, myth with reality, and the people, taught to see their rulers as gods, accepted it. Charles II of Spain was called El Hechizado, the Bewitched, but magic had nothing to do with his suffering. He was the final act in a royal experiment that pushed genetics to the edge of collapse. Born in 1661, Charles was the last Habsburg king of Spain, a dynasty so obsessed with keeping power in the family that it folded in on itself. Generation after generation, cousins married cousins, uncles married nieces, and the family tree twisted into something unnatural. By the time Charles was born, it wasn't a tree at all. It was a circle. He had only 16 great-great-grandparents instead of the normal 32. That missing diversity showed in his body. Charles had a massive jaw that made chewing difficult, an enlarged tongue that impaired his speech, and a body so weak he couldn't walk until age 8. He suffered seizures, chronic infections, and infertility. Publicly, he was mocked. Privately, he was pitied. Doctors couldn't explain it, priests claimed witchcraft, but history tells us it was all written in his DNA. His sister was offered as a bride to various royal cousins, continuing the same closed-loop nightmare. Charles had no heirs, no strength to rule, and no real childhood. When he died in 1700, he was just 38, and the Habsburg line in Spain died with him. His autopsy revealed a body utterly wrecked from within. Charles wasn't cursed by spells, he was broken by bloodline. A haunting reminder of what happens when legacy is placed above life itself. Today, it feels unthinkable. But then, it was divine. A royal performance where love was replaced by legacy, and every embrace carried the weight of a throne. In this world, even intimacy was political, shaped not by desire, but by destiny. They built empires, crowned themselves gods, and ruled from palaces carved into stone. But beneath all that splendor lay a quiet, relentless cost. These kings, in their pursuit of pure blood and unchallenged rule, made choices that would echo for generations. Infertility haunted their lines. Deformities were hidden behind veils of silk and ceremony. Madness was passed down like a crown, and in the end, so many of their dynasties didn't just fall, they collapsed from within. No assassin, no rebellion, just the slow erosion of life itself. For all the monuments they left behind, the most enduring legacy was biological ruin, a price paid not in gold or glory, but in the bodies and minds of their children. So now we're left to ask the question their subjects never could. Was it ever worth it? The thrones they fought to preserve crumbled. The names they immortalized now remind us not of power, but of a haunting, irreversible silence written into blood. This didn't disappear, it evolved. While modern royals no longer marry their sisters, the instinct to keep bloodlines close never truly vanished. Look carefully, and you'll see it hidden in plain sight. Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip were third cousins. So were King Charles and Princess Diana. Even in the 21st century, Europe's royal houses remain deeply intertwined, tied by generations of political matchmaking and shared ancestry. The names have changed, the ceremonies are polished, but the impulse, to guard legacy by controlling lineage, remains. Today's royal images are filtered through elegance and diplomacy, but the genetics tell another story. In some cases, the risks linger quietly: increased chances of rare conditions, fragile fertility, and a gene pool that's narrower than it seems. We don't talk about it, not openly, but behind the pearls and pageantry, the old logic still pulses. Protect the name, preserve the line. Maybe the question isn't whether this practice has ended, but how well it's been disguised.